everyone, I'm Michaela Kathleen. Happy Women's History Month. This is my final Women's History Month video, although I did read all books by female authors this month, so my monthly wrap-up will also be kind of feminist themed. And I will link down below my previous 3 feminist videos that I've done so far this month. For this video, I am talking about some feminist books I would like to read over the course of the next year, and hopefully I'll be able to do this video again next year for Women's History Month and give you an update on which of the books I managed to get around to buying and or reading. I have 12 books on this list for nonfiction, for poetry books, and for fiction books. I'm going to start with the nonfiction books. So the first book on my list of feminist books I would like to read this year is Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. This is an essay collection, and obviously I don't know a ton about it because I have not read it. That is the whole point of the video. But I have seen Roxane in interviews on the Dietland after show, the show that was on AMC a few years ago. I was really sad it got canceled. It only lasted 1 season, which was super sad because it was a really interesting show about feminism, and they had this whole after show where they were interviewing different feminists, and Roxane was on at least 1 episode, if not more, and I always found her really interesting, so I'm very excited to read her book. The next nonfiction book on my list is Invisible Women: Data Bias in a World Designed for Men by Caroline Criado Perez. And this is a nonfiction book about data bias in basically everything in our lives, it sounds like. I found out about this issue maybe like a year or 2 ago, and I find it really sad but also kind of fascinating in a bad way. And yeah, there's just a lot of research going on out there where basically they're only using male test subjects, which results in very skewed results that mean women are put at a disadvantage because everything is made for men. From dosing on medicine to cars that are built with male crash dummies, which results in women being 47% more likely to be seriously injured in a car crash. The third book on my nonfiction list is I Am Malala by Malala Yousafzai. Malala is a young girl who advocates for the education of women worldwide. She is from Pakistan, and when she was 15 years old, she was shot at point blank range in the head while commuting home from school on the bus. And since then, Malala has been an advocate for education worldwide for girls. Malala is super inspiring, and she advocates for an issue that is particularly close to my heart. I believe that education is really a person's most important right. Without an education, it becomes that much harder to fight for any of your other rights, and that is why it is the first thing that an oppressor tries to take away from the people that they are trying to oppress. The fourth book on my nonfiction list is ProReclaiming Abortion Rights by Katha Pollitt. A person's right to bodily autonomy is another extremely important right, and I think it is the right that is most in danger right now for women. Moving on to the 4 books on my poetry list, 4 feminist books that I want to read this year, and I don't read really any poetry, but I think that feminist poetry I would probably actually like, so this can be kind of my first dive into poetry. I think it would be a good place to start. The first one is Shout by Laurie Halse Anderson. I have talked about this one on my channel before. I read Speak by Laurie Halse Anderson in 9th grade for school, and I really enjoyed that one. And this book is actually a poetry book that is a memoir, just told in poetry form. And this particular feminist poetry focuses on sexual assault. The next book on my poetry list is Milk and Honey by Rupi Kaur. It is split into 4 parts that each focus on a different topic, and it is about the experience of violence, abuse, love, and loss, and of course, femininity. The next book on my poetry list is The Princess Saves Herself in This One by Amanda Lovelace, and I just really love the title of this one. It is told in 3 parts: the princess, the damsel, and the queen. And so I think it just sounds like a really interesting way to structure a poetry book and a book about feminism, and kind of playing on the fairy tale theme, which I love because I love fairy tales, and so I'm very interested to read this one. The last book on my poetry list is The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. This book is about a teenage girl who discovers slam poetry, which I love listening to slam poetry on YouTube, so it'll be interesting, I think, to read about a character who is delving into that world herself. And the book also the character is dealing with her slam poetry is kind of causing friction with her family because they want her to obey the laws of their church, and I guess this is kind of going against that, which I think will also be kind of interesting to read. Moving on to my list of feminist fiction books I would like to read. The first one is The Power by Naomi Alderman. This one looks a little bit Handmaid's Tale-ish, which has me intrigued. I am just about to read The Handmaid's Tale. I'm hoping I'll be able to squeeze it in before the end of the month so I can include it in my wrap-up video. But it is a book in which all of the women in the world suddenly find that they have the power to inflict terrible pain or even death. And so I think that's really interesting. I think it'll be kind of maybe a little bit morbidly fun to read a book that is not a book where the women are oppressed and it's, you know, kind of a book trying to show like sexism and all that stuff and show how bad it is by showing women being oppressed, but instead is a book where suddenly women have all the power and can do with it what they will. The next book on my fiction list is Beloved by Toni Morrison. I am sad to report that I have not read any Toni Morrison books, and so I definitely would like to get to one someday, and hopefully I will really enjoy it and can read more of her books. But I wanted to start with Beloved. That one seems to be the most popular, but it follows the life of a girl in slavery, and it is definitely just a classic that I definitely should get to. The next book on my fiction list is Vox by Christina Dalcher. This one also seems a little bit Handmaid's Tale-ish, but instead of being kind of like the opposite of the Handmaid's Tale, like in The Power, it is much more like the Handmaid's Tale. In the book, women have been restricted to being able to say only 100 words a day, and it is sort of about their struggle to fight for their rights despite their limited voice. So I think that sounds kind of fascinating. Goes maybe a little bit a step past The Handmaid's Tale, in which women are not allowed to read, and here women are not even allowed to speak for the most part. And the final book on my fiction list and my entire list is Americanah by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. And this is about 2 young people who are from Nigeria and fall in love in post 9/11 America, and it just sounds like it'll be a lovely love story from an author that I'm very interested to read. She also wrote the book We Should All Be Feminists, which is nonfiction, which I have not read, but I have listened to her TED Talk of the same title, and it was very good. So yeah, those are the 12 books on my list of feminist reads I would like to read by this time next year. Hopefully I get to at least some of them. And if you have any other recommendations of feminist reads that I should maybe look at putting on my list, let me know down below. Thanks for watching, and remember, words matter.